Welcome to All Things Flamingo podcast with the Flamingo Group and myself, Beth Reilly. Join us as we discuss all things to do with our community, real estate, and all things Flamingo. Welcome and tune in for a flocking good time. Well, hello. Today I get the privilege to talk to Mike Hartley, who is running for City Council District in Bloomington, District 3, in fact. Thank you so much for coming on. I truly appreciate this opportunity, and I get to hear all the things that you want to do and your background and experience. So thank you again. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This is, I think, the first time I've ever been on a podcast, so I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Well, one of the things I wanted to make sure that we talked about was you and I called you, 3 weeks ago, and said, hey, why are you running? I think that's always a good question to ask people is, why put all this time and attention into Bloomington when, you could relax and play golf or do whatever else you'd like to do? It's not like you're going to make a lot of money doing this. So your background is a life of service. I would like to learn more of what brought you to this decision and really that you have given your whole life in service.
Yeah. So, specifically to Bloomington, I was a 32-year police officer. I got my start down in Tallahassee, Florida. And then in 1997, I was hired as an officer with the Bloomington Police Department. My wife, Mary, and I have called Bloomington home for 26 years. And it wasn't just a place that I went to work each day and served this city, but it was a place where we raised our family, attended public schools, graduated from Kennedy. We enjoyed the parks, the amenities. I coached, I volunteer. So, Bloomington, we're in the fabric of Bloomington. We've got a lot of friends here. Son and daughter were involved in school activities. Son played Kennedy hockey. And so for me, when my career ended with the Bloomington Police Department, I retired last year, March of 2022.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I actually kind of thought my last couple years about running for city council. There were some things that were happening in the city, specifically during what was a difficult time for the men and women in law enforcement. And to be fair, not everybody on the council, but I just thought, I just think that the city could be more, I think, better represented. And you're right. I've dedicated most of my adult life to public service. And so I just thought, with a background in public safety is at the forefront of a lot of people, a lot of cities, and the decisions they're making as far as funding and attracting police officers. I thought that experience of leadership, making tough decisions, managing a budget, being accountable and transparent to the public that we serve. I thought that'd be kind of a good transition into that of an elected official.
So you went to Tallahassee. When was that? The beginning of your career? The middle? When did that happen?
Yeah, so back in the 1980s, it wasn't like it is today. You'd show up to test for a police job and there'd be about 500 people there. And when you're, 5'9", about 150, soaking wet, I can tell you there's not a lot of police departments they're going to, when they got 500 other people to pick from. So very competitive back then. It was not uncommon for many of my friends that ended up working, throughout my career, left Minnesota for either, out west or down south. And so I was almost done with my 4-year degree when I left Minnesota, but I thought, Florida State sits in Tallahassee, had an opportunity, a job offer there, and spent 7 years with that police department, finished up my career or my college degree, met my wife, my son was born, but really always missed the 4 seasons that Minnesota offered. And so I convinced her that this was a good place to raise a family. And here we are.
You did a good job. You should be in sales.
Well, you know what? It's funny that how we transitioned because, we had some mild winters in 97 when we first moved back, but now, this Floridian that I married doesn't like the heat anymore. And we actually look forward to the fall and the spring. And, you can always dress for cold, but you can only take so much off when it's really hot outside.
And it's humid, man. Florida is a different
different bear, a different animal.
Yep.
When you said, actually, I had told some people that I was going to interview you, and I was super excited about it. And they said, "Oh, Mike, Coach Mike," and you were involved quite a bit with BAA. Is that right?
That is correct. I obviously my son and daughter were playing on the teams, but even back then, we see a shortage of people willing to step up and volunteer. It's so important, and I really enjoyed those years. Met a lot of other really good parents that we're still friends with today, and I was kind of known around town as Coach Mike.
Yeah. And thanks for doing that. I mean, my husband and I did a lot of volunteering too. And it's interesting, but it's such a great enhancement of your life. You find time, the more you give, the more you can give. It's a very interesting phenomenon,
Right.
especially when it has to do with development of your group, your society, children. I think it's a mentality, and I hope more people get involved and start doing that.
Yeah,
So,
it shows the selfless that to get involved with something. And again, coaching your children, it's not as if you're, leaving home to go out and join the Peace Corps, but what
right.
it is it's just not a lot of people want to step up because it is a responsibility. But it's something that like I said, we still have friends today that we met through those years of coaching baseball and softball. And, like I said earlier, my son played hockey. Daughter was involved in the performing arts. And, that's the connections you make in the community. Especially as a police officer, they pay dividends. You connect with the people you're serving. They see you in a different light. You're just not a uniformed, body driving around. You're actually, interacting in social circles. And I think it's good for the profession to see people in that light.
I agree. In fact, I think Malcolm Gladwell actually wrote a book about that. It was part of his book that he had some neighborhoods that were difficult, and he had police officers delivering turkeys at I think Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Different neighborhoods, and it made a huge difference because suddenly they weren't the guy in a uniform; it was just a guy with Thanksgiving dinner.
Yep. No, it's important.
It really is. Now you're going to be leading in District 3. And what that would be is kind of the orange part of the map right here on city council districts and precincts.
Yep.
And you also have so that would include Normandale Lake, the Normandale Lake Towers, which is right behind you right now.
Yes, it would.
Okay. Could you tell me what are some of the unique pieces to that specific district that you'd like to discuss or make sure that you think you'd be helpful on?
Yeah. So I think one of the big ones is I am pro development. It's got to be responsible. It's got to be, take into consideration the surrounding neighborhoods and commercial districts. But I get asked a lot about Southtown and the vacant buildings up there that haven't really been filled and haven't been occupied in many years. And so, I think it's important that we turn those properties over. We remain a viable opportunity and place where people will come in and invest money. And, it's promote like I said, when people are looking to invest and develop, that Bloomington remains near the top of the list as a destination to do so. We've got a lot of housing that's going in. District 3 is kind of unique where, my house that I live in was built in 1957. It's your typical, Bloomington Rambler.
Mm-hmm.
They were built for kind of I think they said it was like a household of 4.5 people and one car garages. And, they're not efficient and they got big backyards, but they're aging. And so we see as you move, to the Lyndale Avenue, that's where my district starts, and it moves west along 90th. You see different areas of that need to be assessed or addressed in those different neighborhoods, whether it be the housing stock, vacant buildings, the opportunity to put unit housing in, and then you kind of work your way out to the west and 169, and they're different neighborhoods out there.
Completely different.
They're-
Water tower, totally
Exactly.
different housing.
What they're looking for, out of city services, maybe just a little bit different, but they're still expecting, a responsive local city government.
Yeah, no, you mentioned too the area that you're in right now, the 1950s. There's a lot of split levels. There's a lot of one-car garages tucked. There's great land there, and it's an unbelievable location. St. Pauli, is it Paulie's Pond? Is that it? Right across the street from the fire station and everything there?
Yep, right on 84th.
That looks like an area that, if it were redeveloped, would they consider tear downs? Would they promote tear downs? Just that I see a higher quality or a higher end home into those areas because those ponds are gorgeous. I mean, it's very nice.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. Obviously everybody, they're attracted, obviously to have a piece of property that borders, lake shore or water systems, but I think we need to just be careful. Like I said, I am pro development, but we just have to look at, be measured in our response to that. We need to make sure that the impact of the surrounding neighborhood, just aesthetically, on traffic, on the continuation of city services, that's not a major disruption. But you're right, and when you look at what houses are selling for these days, and those that want kind of the specifics of lakeshore property or lakefront, waterfront, it's Paulie's Pond gets pretty vegetated in this late summer, as a lot of lakes in Minnesota do. But nothing beats, a flock of geese landed down in your backyard, and all that what would attract people to that living environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is becoming tired real estate, and I'm just wondering. I don't know. I have no idea what the code is, so I am talking from the other side of my mouth here, but it just looks like we could do better. We could have opportunities for people to redevelop it through taking some of them down.
Yeah, and then, like I said, that's always, there'd have to be considerable community engagement. There are people that, they've been here for decades. This is Bloomington's their home, and if you started to talk about that and the benefits, if you will, of bringing in new housing stock, there's always going to be those that, and rightfully so. I understand they're going to push back a little bit, but in my own neighborhood, up off of 81st and Abbott, probably 15, probably longer, 20 years ago, there was an old church that was torn down, and we're faced with the same thing. And a petition came around to the neighborhood, and people they were worried about the impact on the neighborhood to put in, higher end townhomes, what that would do to traffic and just, the land use density. But I can tell you, I didn't sign the petition because I didn't know enough about it at the time. I wanted to take a deeper dive, but they've been a great addition. They're about 2 blocks, to the east of where we live. They've been a great addition, very well kept property, and I think again, if it's done responsibly and it's taking into account the disruptions that you may have in the existing neighborhood, I don't think it's a bad thing.
Plus, those were higher end. I mean, you have to pay a penny for those, so I think that also creates a different buyer.
It does.
In the neighborhood.
Yep.
When you talked about thoughts on leadership, there were 3 words you used, and it was transparent, accountable, and responsive. Maybe you can go back, tell me a little bit of what it was like being interim police chief and how these 3 words came to you, and then also how you would, push it forward and use it in the future in your district.
Yeah. So, when we talked initially, these are just things that I think the public, they expect from public servants, whether it's police, whether it's, elected officials, they want to know what's going on. Unfortunately, not everybody does. I wish more people were involved in kind of the civic process. But, when I was the interim chief, I was chief during a time of, kind of a low point in the history of law enforcement. It was right after George Floyd had been killed. And, there were a lot of questions around police and police tactics and at a worldwide level. And so what we had already started to kind of move in the direction of, and I sped up, I had a 100-day plan that when I became chief, but it was just being transparent because I just believe that, the more people know about what you're doing and why you're doing it, it answers the question. And it comes into the more transparent you are, the more accountable you have to be, because people learn more about, police tactics, why you do things. And, that you're going to have to live up. We put just about we did put all of our arrests, our traffic citations, to include race, right there for the whole world to see on the internet. And we did that because, I believed in the work that the men and women of the Bloomington Police Department were doing. And we have nothing to hide. And so I felt that there would be a huge benefit to posting all that data. I still think it's a benefit. And the third thing was responsiveness. When people call you and they've got a problem, you get back to them. I mean, not everybody internally or externally agreed with the decisions that I made in my years on the command staff. But I can tell you that I forged a reputation in Bloomington of being responsive and listening to people. And whether I agreed with them or not, or whether what they alleged against one of our officers was true, we went to body cameras several years ago, and so you could give them an educated response after watching the video, but being responsive to people so that they're not sitting out there waiting for you to call back, waiting for a concern that they have. And I think that kind of transitions into being an elected official, a city council member. And that's simply, understanding that we serve just this broad base of people, and not everybody's going to think the same. Not everybody's going to look the same, but we need to make ourselves responsive to all so that they feel that the government local government that's working for them is accountable, and that they're being transparent, regardless of what, where you come from in life, where you live. That's important because I think it's what trusting governance is built upon. And when people trust you, they may not always agree with you, but at least they know that, for the most part, you're listening and you're going to do what.
Right. I noticed too, when people were during that time, people were being critical or whatever. And I did notice that they did their own research. They just went out. They went online. They started to look at everything that was going down at that time. And I did notice more and more support our police signs were going up all over the neighborhoods. And I mean, all over the neighborhoods. As you know, I'm all over Bloomington because I sell all over Bloomington.
Right.
I go to church on the east side. I do all sorts of different things. And they did go out there and they did have to be personally accountable too for what they were saying.
Right.
If there's no information, you can say whatever you want.
Exactly.
Right? But if there's information and there's actually things online for people to do their own research and to follow up on, they did it. And I think it calmed an incendiary environment.
Yeah, I think it had a lot of different effects on the community. Number one, we reached out and we community engaged with those diverse populations that are coming. They look at law enforcement through a historical lens where the relationship has been rocky through the decades and the ages, and that's understandable. And so, but it let people know, and especially the officers that were working at that time, many who were contemplating whether they wanted to still work as police officers. But
right.
I was asked last night on a forum, what's the best part of Bloomington? And my answer, and others on the council forum, was the people. And I can tell you that, leading a department through those darker days and coming into work and seeing the residents bringing, whether it was food, whether it was cards and letters and stuff from the kids. And, I would respond to it as much as we could. It just got to be so overwhelming that it became almost emotional when you come to work each day and see this. But that's what Bloomington means to me. it's residents that care, not only just about their police department, but about the people that are serving them and making their life, whether it's snow plowing streets, whether it's maintaining parks so that they're beautiful and they're accommodating and inclusive. That's where I see, the value of the people here and kind of the reward of serving when you see that back, like you did with the signs.
And again, I couldn't agree more, because when I've sold again all over the area, and I have to say, I do not have problems with neighbors. So sometimes I have actually sold houses for people and they've left neighborhoods because the neighbors or the situation was just kind of uncomfortable. Barking dogs, pit bulls. Those are a lot where people, barking dogs is a big deal after a while, where people are like, I'm just moving. It's not going to change. I have not had that in Bloomington, and this is a couple 200 to 300 houses in, so it's hard to measure that.
Right. No,
very hard to.
And you're right. I mean, kind of the environment of when you come home, especially after you've worked all day, and now you've got some nuisance or something, that a barking dog. But a shameless plug for our crime prevention unit. They do a whole lot more than just prevent crime. They go out and actually mediate with neighbors. They get some sort of plan in place and understanding. They bring the parties together, and they've been successful in kind of just remedying some of the disturbances that you talk about.
Right. And then there's no retaliation or whatever.
Exactly.
It can always escalate. We've touched on this before. Now, you ran the budget and everything for the police department. Is that correct? Or you were part of the budget, keeping things under control?
Yep. So I managed the budget. I was deputy chief for 6 years. And one of my responsibilities was obviously the operation. So under Chief Potts, he played a role in the budget as well. But it was kind of my niche. And, we had some challenging years, 2018, obviously a dip in the economy, and we were in a mini recession, and we had to make some decisions on a few cuts, just so that we were being responsive to kind of what was going on in the national and local economies. But I'm happy to say that I think when I left, it was a $28 million budget. We would always come in under budget, and then I had the opportunity to carry that money over to be used for special projects, and knowing that, kind of forecasting future spending, we would be able to utilize that money in a different fiscal year.
So how does fiscal responsibility, how would that play out in District 3?
Well, I think, I think that being fiscally responsible is being accountable to the taxpayers of Bloomington. And, keep in mind that I was, out of 123 sworn police officers in Bloomington, I was one of, I think, less than 20 that actually lived in the community. And so, this is where I raised my family. This is where we would grocery shop, and we would go to the park and coach ball, go to church. And so I would hear it from people. They knew I was a city employee, and they would ask me, well, why are they spending this, or why are they, passing this ordinance? And so part of being fiscally responsible, I think, is just keeping in mind that is money that's coming from the taxpayers. Certain years are a little bit tougher because of the economy, the dips, and currently we're seeing we're in the middle of a 40-year high inflation. So the cost of operating a household is higher now. And so being fiscal responsible to me just means that you take into account, you prioritize spending, and you never lose sight of whose money you're actually spending. And that's why I take any levy increase. Look, I know what it costs to run local government. I was in the command staff, and I managed a budget. It's expensive, and wages are up across the board in both the public and private sector. And so I know where you're going to have that levy start off at every year. But what I would say is just be mindful that, if you are going to fund this priority now in 2023, in the next, fiscal year, maybe you look back 5 years and you find a program that maybe just isn't as productive it's not necessarily meeting the needs of the community, you evaluate that. I'm not for any kind of a budget freeze, but I think you just always have to remember who that money belongs to. Not everybody has just disposable income that they can just, oh, the levy's up. Well, no, we'll absorb that. We have a lot of residents on fixed incomes, our lower income residents, our retirees. And so anytime you start raising a levy, it has real impact. And so it's not that you can, when you're out, meeting people and talking to friends and neighbors throughout the community, there will be levy increases. That's just part of doing business and providing high level, high quality service. But I just think you be mindful of how you're spending that money and you're operating as efficiently as you can.
I think that also people are pretty hypersensitive right now because they had so many tax raises all over the city. And this is the first time I've been in real estate for 12 years now, sold in Bloomington. And I just put 2 houses on the market this year and it was less than what their tax value is. And it's, that's the first time I've ever done that in 12 years. And so, people are irritated by that because they feel like, well, what am I getting? Right. So I agree with you as far as really, and I think the transparency and where the money is going is also incredibly important so that people feel that as they vote, they can vote for somebody that's going to spend money the way they want it spent.
Yeah. And again, and also providing, again, I agree 100% with the transparency piece. I don't have to like the ultimate decision, but I have to understand it. And that's where, and again, the city does a nice job of community engagement. They do a nice job. They've got a lot of different avenues of connecting with the community. Yep. But, when you look and see how many people are tuning into a city council meeting on any given Monday night, I hate to say it, but out of a city of 90,000 people, there's certain nights where when I've tuned in, I'm one of about 18 people.
Right.
And
that needs to change.
It needs to change.
That needs to change.
And so if you want to, and that's kind of what I looked at is I retired from 32 years of police work. I can tell you since I filed on the second week of August, this is a lot of work. It's a commitment. You learn a lot about yourself, but more importantly, you learn a lot about the people that call Bloomington their home, the business owners that call this place their home, and what they expect. And I'll level with you. I'm a shoot straight kind of guy. I always say, well, where have you been? Where you've been sitting on the sideline for so long. Let people know, because I know, you call enough. A city official may not get back to you, and when I say this, an actual department head or somebody who works for the city. But if you stay on it long enough, someone will, or move up the chain, someone will get back to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they always do. And that's true. And I've had things for anything from a house inspection on up. I have always gotten a call back. So I'm not dogging it, but this is why I have a podcast, is because I want people to know what's going on and I want them to participate. It's not hard to participate. So I agree. Another thing you talked about is in your leadership, you learn to say no, and also that you needed to hear both sides. Right.
So I think, obviously, being a member of the command staff for, since 2013, I value diversity. We value it in the residents in Bloomington because having a diverse, population, it just adds to the overall feel of a city. But I'll also add, in addition to diversity of a person, diversity of thought, I think is important as well, because when I was making decisions as a deputy chief or as the chief, I valued those in the command side. I valued everybody in the organization, but sometimes you would hear a perspective from somebody that you didn't necessarily always reach out to. No one knows that job better than the police officer that's been doing it for 25 years. And so I'd reach out to the command staff. We would have meetings where I valued their input, because I can tell you, Mike Hartley is not always right. I just am not. And no one's ever right. And so I wanted to hear back, and I wanted to use all that input to come up with the best possible decision that would affect not just one or two people of the department, but the whole department as a whole. And so, unfortunately, that wasn't always popular. Decisions had to be made that, not everybody agreed with. And that, look, when I was a police officer and working under a rank and file system, I didn't always agree with the, decisions at the top. But when I say you have to say no, sometimes, people expect that, to do a job a certain way, they need to be, equipped properly. And I'll be the first to say that we would never send, in any department I've ever been associated with, especially in a leadership role, we would never send anybody out inadequately equipped to do the job.
Right.
Won't do it. But you also have to look at what you need to do the job and what maybe the officers or personnel want to do the job. And there's just two different things. And so the needs are what we are going to, that is a given. You need ballistic armor, you need, top equipment, the squad car, all that stuff, keep you safe. And so you effectively can serve the community. But on occasion, a want would be asked for, and it just wasn't in the budget, or it was something that we could have afforded on the front end. But, one of the things the police department has a replacement schedule, anywhere from 3 years, up to 10 years. So everything we purchase, we have to purchase setting money aside each year so that we can replace it.
Right.
And so that sometimes was, it made for some unpopular decisions. But again, you leadership has never been based. I've been to the FBI Academy. I've been to, Northwestern College Staff and Command. So I've gotten a lot of leadership training. And I've never learned that leadership is based on, and the highest level of leadership is based on giving people everything that they want.
Right.
It's just not. But it's not always popular when you have to be the person to say, we can't afford it this year. We're going to have to kick that can down the road. But again, we would never do that with the needs to do the job, but maybe some of the asks for the wants.
I agree. Plus, let's face it, if you give a child everything they want, you know what you get? A brat.
I'm not going to disagree, but here's what I don't want. I don't want to compare our police officers to children. So, but I will tell you, I agree with that analogy. And again, they understand, because keep in mind, a majority of the department would go home to other cities.
Right.
And I would hope that they would expect that the local, their local cities, administrators were looking out for them and their economic, well-being, and not, just spending and raising levies and now their property taxes. I can tell you, because I have many friends that lived down south of the river, that was their expectation from their city. But sometimes when they crossed over the Minnesota River, they kind of lose that feel. And now it was all about, we need A, B, C, and D. And, you just have to find a way to pay for it. And, 9 times out of 10, we are going to find a way to pay for it.
Right.
This city has always supported its police department. I worked for 2 different city managers. I never walked away feeling that, they were shortchanging the police department. Quite the contrary. Public safety has always been, and I believe always will be, a high priority for, current administration and Bloomington community, as a whole.
Yeah, well, nix it. I wasn't comparing cops to brats. It's just,
I know.
If you give people if you give in leadership at all, if you give everything people want, it turns into a messy situation.
Right. Eventually, you're going to have to say no.
Exactly.
And so it's better, I think, to kind of set that expectation instead of, kind of letting people kind of put the work in, if you will. There's a lot goes into making major purchases at the city level, and then having them put all that staff time into it, only to say, I think we're not going to, we're going to pass on this. So it's like I said, that Bloomington Police Department, take me completely out of it, is the best police department in the state. I'm telling you, was part of the command staff that funded not only the best police department, but the best officers in the state. And I'm telling you, no offense to my law enforcement friends throughout the metro area, I think they'd agree.
Nice.
They did a really nice job.
One of the quotes that you gave me when we were talking before on the phone was running the city is not political. It is more about our streets, development of real estate, and planning for what is best for the community.
Yeah, what I fear is, and I've felt it more so now in the last probably month, and let's just call it 5 weeks. Getting into politics, it should be about representing the people. You're there to serve the interests of the community, whether that's at the state, federal, or local level. I don't want to see what's happened at the federal level with the partisanship, where nothing gets done. You see it at the state level to some extent. I just don't think there's any place for that at the local level. And I don't wear my political stripes on my sleeve. I'm simply a guy that I think has a reputation in Bloomington of doing what's right for the community. And I just think over the last several years, we've kind of seen this trickle down where now some of the decisions are politically based, I believe, where kind of the direction, if you will, of the city is a little bit more of maybe political in nature. And I want to make sure that local government is about serving the entire community. That includes, our diverse residents, our residents that identify, on many different sexual orientations. I don't want to exclude anybody. We are an inclusive community, and we are welcoming, and I really believe that, because I don't think we would see, if you look at the demographics of who's moving into Bloomington, I can tell you that it's a large percentage is that increase is of diverse residents and diverse populations. And I like I said, I think that's good. It's good for the community. But I just want to make sure that regardless of what your background is, you have a city council that's responsive to everybody. And again, I'm just telling you, if elected, 90,000 people and business owners, they're not all going to agree with me.
Right.
But I will tell you that when I get done speaking with them and they see where I'm coming from, I'm not going to convince you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be completely honest, tell you why I voted a certain way on a decision, why I think this was a good thing to pursue. And, I'm used to having people not necessarily always agree, but I will show them the respect that they deserve to be heard, and their opinions count.
Mm-hmm. One of the things you mentioned too is that Bloomington is considered the no fun city. What does that mean?
Well, here's what I think. I think, back in the day when we had several professional sports teams playing in Bloomington, keep in mind, as a young guy in the 80s, I'm from Columbia Heights. We would come down and we'd either go to a football game. We were big North Star fans. And then you would stick around, and the 494 strip back in the day, that was the place to be.
Right.
So Bloomington, through the years, those that have spent their entire life or went to high school in Bloomington and have spent more than just 26 years as I have, they've kind of seen a decline in some of the offerings of, maybe bars and restaurants that were kind of prominent back in the day. But I think you need to look at how long it took Bloomington. They had some events. They used to have Heritage Days. We don't have that anymore. They used to have, Bennigan's used to host a St. Patty's Day weekend where they had live music in a big tent Friday and Saturday. The cops loved it because we'd work security, and it was very well attended by people that were coming out to have a good time in Bloomington, listen to some music. But, those things kind of got phased out. I knew, because I was a police officer at the time, that, they generated some noise complaints and from across 494 before Best Buy came in, and it was neighborhoods to the north. It's taken us forever to get a brewery in Bloomington. Food trucks have seemed like that was just kind of a slow process. So when I say the no fun, it's just kind of, it gained the reputation of, let's just do that.
Go there.
let's not go there.
Let's go there. Let's go
just take it
someplace
somewhere
else.
And so I think that's unfortunate, because I'll tell you, as somebody who, lives here for 26 years, one of our big nights out, kind of an annual night out, I mean, we would go to Summerfest, if I wasn't working it as a police officer, but we would, be up north at a family cabin, on some of the Summerfests. But the softball tournament, the fireman's tournament over at the Valley View Playfields, that was the thing where a lot of people would come back. It was, my kids, graduated from Kennedy High School, and that was where they would kind of go and people would meet. And it was just kind of good to see that the community coming together, both east and west side of Bloomington, and, having fun, drinking some beers and eating corn on the cob. And it's a fun atmosphere.
Right.
I think we need more of that. I think we need stuff that doesn't necessarily exclude people or kind of only cater to a certain type of person. I want to bring the whole community together. I like the idea of Heritage Days. I think we could, revisit that and bring that back, and maybe get a little bit more city input. And
I went to all of them. Yeah, I had a great time.
Yeah, they were fun.
Yeah,
they were a good time.
Everything. I totally agree. Well, Mike Hartley, is there anything I missed?
No, we've talked about a lot. I mean, like I said, I would be, if elected, and again, I've got my work cut out until, people can start early voting, I believe tomorrow, September 22nd. I would, recommend people looking into that, especially if you think your November could get busy. But November 7th, the community is going to be able to go in District 3 and decide on, whether a guy that's dedicated himself for, 25 plus years, 26 years as a resident, how would I represent him? And I hope I can make the case as I'm knocking on your door and getting out and meeting you that I would represent you by listening and being accountable and taking what I think made me a successful police administrator, kind of translate that to a successful city council meeting.
What is the days? Because if they do vote early, your vote will go to Hennepin County. When would be the times that all the votes stay in Bloomington? Isn't it closer to the November 7th date?
Yeah, I believe the city's set up, obviously, starting on the 22nd to receive your vote, but it doesn't get counted in Bloomington until, I believe, October 20th.
Okay.
So starting October 20th, you can go in and you can access a voting booth, no different than you would that you're used to on a November, regular voting day.
Right.
That would be November 7th this year. So here's my thing. Local elections have real impact on people. I think more so than the federal and state level. I think especially at the federal level. But I would really, get out and vote. If it's not for Mike Hartley, then vote for my opponent. But exercise that right. It's so important. And if you're one of these people that wants to complain about maybe the direction of the city going one way or the other, it's hard to complain if you don't get out and you don't cast that vote. So I hope with anything else that I generate more people just to get out and vote. And like I said, I'm hoping that they see something they like in me, and that I'm elected to city council.
Thank you. So
you are welcome.
Everybody please vote for Mike Hartley for District 3, City Council District 3. It's been a joy talking to you. I like hearing where you're going, and I hope that people really learn and get to know you.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the Flamingo Group for having this and giving me the opportunity to kind of let people know what and who. You've had my website. You can go and read a little bit more about me at hartleyforbloomington.com. And like I said, I think it's important that you know exactly who you would be voting for, and what kind of city council member I'd be. So visit that website.
Thank you. And if you're interested in buying or selling real estate, please reach out to the Flamingo Group. We have many different ways that we can help you with financing. We can help you with contract for deed. We can help you with estates. There's all different ways. So again, my name is Beth Reilly. I'm with the Flamingo Group, and I am a realtor, and we sell the most real estate in Bloomington, Minnesota. Thanks for your time. Thanks again, Mike. And I look forward to talking to more people running for city council.